the practical definition from our vantage point is the act of giving up something valuable. So if I'm going to sacrifice, the act of giving up something valuable for the sake of something that is of greater significance. So the idea of sacrificing, it involves me giving up something that I deem valuable for the sake of something that I see that is more significant. Now, does that make sense? So if I'm going to sacrifice something, then it means that which I receive is of greater value than that which I am going to lose or relinquish or give up. So does that make sense? So now, so whenever I sacrifice something, we know it from a standpoint of you as an adult. Let's say, for instance, you have as an adult, you have children, and you put aside monies for their needs, for their school, for their clothing, and what have you. And you really don't think really twice about it. If they need it, you go get it. If they have to go to the camp, you make sure they have the money to the camp. If they need to go to the school or to the meet or to the whatever else, you as an adult, you sacrifice. Now, they don't know that you sacrifice, but you put money away and you deny yourself of certain things. There's certain things that you probably would want or that you desire, and you have X amount of money, time, talent, and everything else. But you use your money, your time, and your talent, and you say, I am not going to get or receive this, but I'm going to set this money aside because I see a greater purpose. And the greater purpose is going to benefit you. Clear enough? Clear enough. So now, so this is just a practical definition, and I think it's a great practical definition. So when I look at the idea of sacrifice, that means I'm going to give up something valuable. So that means that sacrifice can't be something out of my dollar pocket. Sacrifice can't be something that doesn't mean anything to me. Sacrifice can't be anything that's just junk. Does that make sense? When you look at sometimes one of the big pushbacks I have that I've had even in ministry is the idea of a thrift store from the ministry. People have asked, hey, can we do a thrift store and can we provide clothing for the needy or for whatever else? The problem of providing clothing for the needy has not been problematic to me. I thought that was good. That's cool. But what I had a problem with was everybody in the church would give us junk. So they would give us the clothing and the items that you really don't want, right? And so my thought was that's not a sacrifice because it's not something of value to you. Am I making sense? It's something you want to discard. It's meaningless to you. It has no value. So in order to be a sacrifice, it has to have some value to you. But then you have to be thinking but what I'm going to receive in return will be greater. Clear enough. So now, once again, we're asking the question, why does God demand, or is God so petty that he demands sacrifices? Is that a petty thing? So when we look at it in a religious sense, the idea of surrendering something precious. I'm losing something precious either out of gratitude or to obtain some material or spiritual benefit. I'm going to lose something. I'm going to let something go, but there's some benefit. Once again, either I love it more than I love it so much that I'm cool with it, or I'm going to receive a material or spiritual benefit from it. Do those make sense to you? Those are clear enough. So now let's look at this idea of sacrifice. Once again, sacrifice is practical. Once again, sacrifice is spiritual. So I'd like to go back then, like we usually do, and say, let's look at the idea of sacrifice, and let's look at the principle of first mentioning. When was there the first sacrifice? because that would probably help me to understand more about the setting of sacrifice and how God meant for it to be. Does that make sense? This is what we generally do here. So let's look at where was and when was the first sacrifice. Now, I could argue, and I will be right theologically, if I would argue that the first sacrifice occurred before the world was formed. Because the Bible says before the earth was formed, Christ was slain. Which meant that before heaven and earth, and before there was water and seas and mountains and grass and everything else, and before I was living and walking around and breathing, that God saw something that was valuable, and he used something that was valuable, that was precious to him, i.e. his son. Am I making sense to anybody? To gain something that he saw of greater value. Am I making sense? So that means that as a believer, that if I look at the practical definition, then what it says to me is that God sees me as valuable. Before I did anything to prove that I was good or messed up anything to show that I was bad, God looked at me before I breathed my first breath and declared, "You are valuable to me, therefore I'm going to give up something that is valuable to me." Am I making sense? Now, wait a minute. That means that, wait a minute, is God petty or is God showing value? Am I making sense? Now, but if you say, well, Dr. Moody, that's too theological and too deep for me, I need you to bring me onto the earth. I said, okay, let's go to the earth. So when we look at the setting of a sacrifice, the first sacrifice we see here on earth. Now we see, and you're going to see this scenario. We're going to see sin occur, separation occur. Then we're going to see this interesting word right here, a substitution. And then we're going to see sacrifice. So we're going to see sin, separation, substitution, and then a sacrifice. A sacrifice. They're helping me so much today. I know they're probably working with some of my spelling or something. I appreciate it. So let's look at this. Genesis chapter 3. So we're in the book of beginnings. Genesis chapter 3, verse 7. Then the eyes of both of them were open. Both of them is referring to whom? Adam and Eve. So we see Adam and Eve, and they fall. They fall into sin, right? So they have a relationship with God. Adam tells them not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Eve is deceived. She hands it over to Eve. She hands the fruit to Adam. Adam then chose, right? Adam chooses to eat. And when he eats of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we know that it was not an apple. It doesn't say what fruit it was. So it says it was a fruit, but it does not disclose what fruit it was. So don't go to the grocery store and be praying in the produce aisle, trying not to get the fruit with your deep self. So they ate of the fruit, right? And when they ate of the fruit, then suddenly now, for the first time, they experienced sin. The idea of, wait a minute, I am separated from God. I had a relationship with him, and now I realized, whoa, first of all, I am separated from God, who I've always had a relationship with, and then I realized how vulnerable I really am. So we have sin, and we have separation. The eyes of both of them were open. And they knew that they were naked. Oh my God, I realized I'm exposed. I realized I'm not as together as I thought I was. I realized how I really look without you. And so now when I see how I look without you, then what do I want to do? They sowed fig leaves together and made a covering. So now he and Eve became tailors, and then and found out how, got some fig leaves and sewed them together to cover their nakedness. Right. So now if we just left it at Genesis 3 and 7, what we would have is just sin and separation. Oh my, I'm messed up, right? And then we have a Genesis 3 and 10. God comes looking, and God's looking for Adam. Adam, where are you? And Adam is hiding because he is separated. He is separated because he has sinned. I heard your voice in the garden, and Adam said, I was afraid. Why were you afraid, Adam? Because I was naked, and I hid myself. So it wasn't that God threw Adam away. It was that Adam moved away. Am I making sense? Now, he realized he's naked, and he said, who told you that you were naked? Because we've been talking this whole time. And you've been great. Ain't nobody been tripping the whole time. But now, in this scenario, now all of a sudden something has shifted in your life, and you're feeling very uneasy about me, very uneasy about you, very uneasy about us. We was all right before then, right? Tell your neighbor, that's what sin will do for you. And he said, you have eaten of the tree which I commanded that you not eat. So now God tells him, okay, I see what's happened. You've sinned, and now there's separation, right? And so now, chapter 3, verse 21, same verse, so it's the same conversation. So God begins to hand out consequences because of the fallen nature of man. He gives Eve consequences. He gives Adam consequences. He gives the serpent consequences. So everybody gets consequences, and even the earth has consequences. Everything gets messed up, right? And so now, as for Adam and his wife, after he's given consequences, look at this. The Lord God made tunics of skin and clothed them. Now, some reformist theologians will say, well, this does not mean that there was a sacrifice. And my logic would say the skin had to come from somewhere. Now, am I making sense? That somebody had to give up something. Now, of course, we can't say it was the sheep. We can't say it was the goat. But we know for sure that the Lord God made the tunics. It didn't say Adam and Eve went and made tunics. So now there was some type of sacrifice, right? But get this. What's interesting to me is that none of the animals sinned. Totally innocent. Am I making sense to anybody? But we see now this innocent substitution. I sinned. I messed up. I'm feeling separated. But there has to be a substitution, right? There has to be a sacrifice. So that means something innocent had to die, and then God had to lose something that he had created. And so God was the first man or the first person or the first being to actually give a sacrifice. We have proven that he gave a sacrifice in eternity, and now we've proven that he has given a sacrifice when? On earth. And we've also proven that just like Jesus, if Jesus was slain before the foundation of the world, he was innocent. There was a substitution. And now the animal is walking. Could you imagine being an animal? You walking around chilling? And God come up to you like, hey, I ain't do nothing. This is between you and Adam. Yeah, they did it. I'm just walking over here eating some grass, man. So what we see is the setting of a sacrifice means that oftentimes there is sin, there is separation, and there is something that needs to be substituted. Somebody got to die. And oftentimes the sacrifice or the old sacrificial system showed me something, that it was not oftentimes the offender who died, but it was oftentimes a substitute. So if I say I don't like sacrifices and I don't believe in sacrificial giving, then that means I've got to nullify what occurred before time. I've got to nullify that before the earth was made, before the earth came, that Jesus was slain, because I don't believe in sacrifice. I've got to nullify the fact that Adam and Eve, although they were in sin, some animal had to die. I got to throw all that in the trash because I don't believe in sacrifice. And I forget that I am the one who gets the benefit of the sacrifice. Am I making sense? And that God looks at me as valuable. That's why he chose to make a sacrifice. So then when I don't want to sacrifice, it speaks to the value I have of God. Am I making sense? We're talking about this is a practical idea. Have we explained it well enough? You know what, Dr. Moody, well, okay, that's an animal. So nobody cares about an animal, one, and nobody cares about eternity, two. Throw both of those in the trash. I'm going to say, okay, let's put the animal over here, and let's put that which occurred in eternity, throw it in the trash for a minute, right? We go to Isaac. We see Abraham having to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Now, what made Isaac so valuable? Isaac was valuable not just because he was a son, which made him valuable, but he was also the son of the promise. He was the promised one, which made him even more valuable. He was the answer to your prayer, which made him even more valuable. He was the one that you asked God for, which made him even more valuable. So so you're going to take, get this, the thing that I asked you for and the thing that we prayed about and the man that is connected to my promise, and now you're going to have the unmitigated gall to require me to give back to you that which you promised to me. And you're going to ask me to sacrifice. Am I making sense? And so now Abraham has to deal with the idea of, I have a promised son, I have a valuable son, I have a son that's connected to the covenant and everything else, and you're telling me that my future relationship with you is dependent upon my sacrifice of him. Am I making sense? And so that puts me in the dilemma, because now, God, my paradox is you're asking me to sacrifice the promise while awaiting for the promise. So that when I ask God for certain things, and then God starts blessing me, and then when he turns around and looks at the thing that he blessed me with, and then he has the unmitigated gall to look at me and then require of me that which he promised, that which he told me, that which I prayed to him about, and now you're going to come to me and say to me, now give me back what I asked you. Am I making sense? That does not make sense to me, right? And so Abraham has a paradox, because now his life, Abraham says, Isaac is the son of the promise. But get this, And so now I've got to sacrifice my son, but I've also got to throw away the subject of the divine promise, right? Problem. But look at God. I remember I told you sin, separation, substitution. So Abraham takes Isaac up to the mountain, ties him to the altar, prepares then to sacrifice him. And what does God do? God provides a substitution, a ram in the bush. Am I making sense? And so we see a principle now that's starting to happen here, that whatever God asks for, there is always something else working. I may not always see it, I might not always understand it, but it's something else deeper that's working around here. And that God can always replace whatever he requires. Am I making sense? And so now God then intervenes with Isaac and provides a substitution, right? Or a sacrifice, which is a substitution. Am I making sense? And God, now why is this important? Because God is saying, I'm showing you a symbol of how the sacrificial system works. So when you say, I don't believe in the sacrificial system, then you nullify the entirety of your salvation. Because the entirety of your salvation is based upon the symbolism of the sacrificial system. And you can't get one without the other. And if I nullify the sacrificial system, and I talk about the pettiness of God in terms of requiring a sacrifice, then what I do then is say, I don't need anybody to deal with my sin and my separation. I got it. Am I making sense? So now we're not talking about money no more. Now it's personal. So do you see how petty it is? Because God like, are we arguing money? Why? When I meant sacrifice, you went directly to money. So you forgot about before the foundation of the earth. That don't matter. You forgot about the tunics of Adam and Eve. That doesn't matter. You forgot about Isaac. That doesn't matter. You forgot about the entire sacrificial system that I laid out in Exodus and Leviticus. That entire system that I wrote out. Now you look at that and now you say that doesn't matter. Am I making sense? And so now the entirety of the Old Testament I throw away because I'm trying to save $100. Am I making sense? See, sometimes you got to look at the practical side of it. You got to say, wait a minute. And the reason why you're trying to save $100, get this, is because of the definition we said. You have something valuable, and you don't deem what you're going to receive as more valuable. Okay, I'll put it like this. Jesus says, no man can serve two masters. You're going to hate one and love the other. No man can serve God and money or mammon. So your disdain for the sacrificial system, I'm talking about something so much bigger than your bank account. But you're arguing against this principle because you value your bank account and you devalue your soul.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you liked this message, you can find the rest at cmllcstore.com. We invite you to join us again for our extraordinary worship services every Sunday at 10:30 a.m., Sundays at 4 p.m., and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central, where Dr. Moody teaches how to understand the Bible, and you can get all your biblical questions answered. We look forward to connecting with you. We ask that you subscribe to The Rock ATX on YouTube and follow The Rock ATX on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected to all The Rock is doing. You can also get connected on our website at therockatx.org. Again, thank you for worshiping with us, and be blessed.